As most of you may know, I am a huge fan of the Jackbox Party games, but you might be surprised to hear that I didn't really get into the Jackbox Party Pack 6. Yep, despite the overwhelmingly positive reception on Steam, I'm more siding with the OpenCritic rating. Now that's not to say it's bad, far from it. It's a pretty solid pack of party games, but they didn't really entice me as much as the ones in the previous editions. There are some solid games like Trivia Murder Party 2, and Role Models is decent, but didn't really leave much of an impression. The other games, however, at least in my opinion, weren't that great. Push the Button felt too stressful, and Dictionarium, despite it being short and having decent artwork, isn't one of my personal favorites. But one game in the pack that I genuinely liked is considered by some to be an underrated gem. Joke Boat. Yep, you heard me right, I actually really enjoyed this game more than Trivia Murder Party 2. Slightly. But what makes this game criminally underrated? Have I gone mad? Well, I'm glad you tuned in because you're about to find out why. But first, what is Joke Boat? Joke Boat is a comedy-centric party game where you play as the role of a ventriloquist joining a talent show on a well-run cruise ship, and your goal is to make your best stand-up that wins over the crowd. It's pretty basic, but quite effective, as I'll talk about later. As most Jackbox games go, the journey begins at the main menu screen, which resembles that of a newspaper. Amateur comedians! Are you the next big cruise line comic? Compete in our talent show to find out. One thing I noticed on the sides are what looks like pieces of filler text. I got curious as to what they actually said, so I used my trusty Flash decompiler, found the file it's located in, and sure enough, there's definitely something there, including a rant? Seriously, who reads newspapers anymore? Seems kinda dated, but who am I to judge? People like me who have to research crap? The settings menu has your usual options like audience, extended timers, family-friendly mode, you name it. Party Pack 6 also introduces new options such as passwords and subtitles. Also, not to go off topic here, but I kinda missed those custom settings menus. It gave the games more personality. Upon starting the game up, you're greeted with an entrance presented to you by a pair of ladies. Except you're not going there. You're going backstage with the main host, voiced by Kevin Soretta.
Welcome aboard! I'm Chuck Hull.
Yeah, get used to these puns. Much like Mayonnaise from Split the Room, the host not only has lip-syncing animation, but is also a bit talkative if you get even the least bit inactive in the lobby.
Toot, toot, we gotta scoot. Let's move it, people. Quick, before the ship leaves the dock. Any time now. We don't have all day. Oh, please, whenever you're ready.
Sometimes he'll even say the same line twice.
Let's move it, people. Let's move it, people.
Come on, Chuck, don't get too impatient. Patience is a virtue. Learn it. The game requires a minimum of 3 players, and can be played up to 8. After joining the game through the room code on the controller, you're asked to complete your catchphrase, with 3 random topics to choose from. Once the right amount of players are in and ready, the game can begin. As mentioned before, you play the role of an amateur ventriloquist competing in a talent show, taking place on a boat called the C-. Also, that face on the sun and moon look very familiar. I wonder where I've seen it before. Oh yeah, Bountiful Berkeley. To start, all the players are given a performer itinerary, in other words, a tutorial on how the game works. These are, of course, skippable, or can be disabled entirely in the settings. The itinerary consists of 3 parts. The first involves brainstorming, where players write as many topics as they can until time runs out. These consist of an animal, object, person's name, location, food, brand, plural noun, you name it. The second part involves writing the joke, 2 of them to be exact. First, the player has to choose a joke setup, with only 2 to pick from. Next, they select the topic, with 3 to choose from. If none of these topics suit them, they have the option to reset their choices. However, it can only be done once. After that, you then write your punchline up to 80 characters. If you can't come up with anything, the player can use the Joke for Me button, which will create a pre-made punchline for them, while also deducting half the points similar to how it's done in Quiplash 2. During the writing process, there are captain's log animations that appear, which give a little humorous, sad, or disturbing insight into Chuck's life. There's even a Guespionage cameo in one of the logs. However, the funniest thing about them to me is the fact that the date and time of the log corresponds to the computer's date and time. This makes it all the more hilarious when one of the captain's logs later in the game takes place on what is supposedly Chuck's birthday. After time runs out, or everyone's jokes are in, we're taken to a stage where Chuck introduces the round by rambling, I think.
We sea captains have a saying. If you feel lost, look at the stars. Why should you ignore the siren's call? Because they always call collect. My family never calls me. I haven't been this excited since I had to bail on that Kid Rock cruise. All hands on deck.
Hey, word of advice, Captain. Don't try to clap with your hook. There's young people watching. But my favorite segue has to be this.
Before we begin, I just want to confirm that the rumor about the norovirus is simply untrue. Oh god.
I'm sorry, just that small bit alone is worth a chuckle. No pun intended. Anyways, after that, the performances can commence. The first player up can either perform the joke themselves or have the game perform the joke for them. If you select the former, Chuck will remind you to
remember to say your catchphrase,
followed by a countdown, and then the joke appears through a typewriter effect. Thank God this didn't become the target for false copyright claims like my Technology Showdown videos did. After the joke is fully read, it's followed by the catchphrase you selected. The second player then follows the exact same instructions. After the two jokes are finished, the players, along with the audience, vote on which one is their favorite. The player with the most votes wins the match, and both players split the score depending on the percentage. The winning player receives a 100-point bonus. However, if a sweep occurs, they'll receive a 250-point crushed it bonus instead. If another player's submitted topic is used for a joke, the player who came up with that topic gets a 100-point bonus. And just like in Quiplash, if someone doesn't get in their joke in time, or their joke gets censored, they've basically choked, and the player's other answer wins automatically. During the round, the VIP can skip any joke if they consider it too offensive, but that only works if you have the manual censoring option turned on. After that, the next two players are up, and the cycle keeps going until the end of the round. The scores are then shown on screen, before we move on to the second round. Well, not exactly, it gets a little more complicated than that. You see, the number of rounds depends on the number of players. If you have less than 6 players, there is a second round that works the same as the first, but with the points doubled. You basically create 2 more jokes and then showcase them like before. After that, the final round is worth triple the points. However, if you have 6 to 8 players, it skips straight to the final round, with the points doubled. Speaking of which, before the final round begins, we see the C- speeding up like it's running late on schedule. But wait. Rubber Ducky, is that you? You should be back singing with Ernie in the bathtub. The two cut back and forth, all building up to this. Okay, who did a Titanic joke here? I guess we'll never know what's beyond that duck. T-shirt Island, maybe?
Well, we're sinking again. There's no time to write jokes from scratch.
Dang, Captain Chuck really said that like it was just another Tuesday. Anyways, in the final round, you only have time to make one more joke based on someone else's, albeit with a different punchline. You have 2 existing setups to choose from, one worth a regular value and another worth more. After some more rambling from the captain, the recycled joke is shown first, before players and the audience vote on whether or not they're better than the original. Sometimes a Captain Chuck puppet will show up to compete against another player. This, however, only happens if a player chokes at least once. By the way, I do like the little details of the ship sinking as the final round plays out, such as the text tilting, the shaking from the explosions, the voting taking place underwater, and instead of human hands, you've got lobster claws. It's the little details like this that never really get a lot of appreciation. After all is said and done, the final scores are revealed, and the player with the most points at the end of the game wins a life vest, while everyone else on the ship presumably dies. The winning player, Captain, and Parrot all set sail on a lifeboat called, and I'm not even kidding here, the Wee Minus, as the credits roll, and presumably get stranded on an island where they meet Johnny Castaway. If you have post-game sharing turned on, the players can share their jokes they created on social media through the controller. Okay, so before I get into my thoughts on the game, let's talk about the people who made it and how it came to be. The game was directed by Spencer Ham, whose history with Jackbox dates back to being a head writer for the 2011 reboot of You Don't Know Jack. Jokeboat marks his 3rd Jackbox game he's directed, following Split the Room from Pack 5 and Survive the Internet from Pack 4. Spencer also served as one of the game's main writers, alongside Brooke Bright, whom I'll talk about later. The game was produced by Luke Cody, another longtime Jackbox member. He joined the company near the end of 2011 in the QA department, before working his way up to community manager and QA lead for games like Fibbage, Quiplash, and the first 2 party packs. In 2016, he became a production manager for pretty much every major party pack, starting with 3. Pack 6 would be his last pack he would produce, as starting in around 2020 following a reorganization, his role was shifted to senior producer and submission manager, where he would remain over the next few years. This led to him producing only 1 game per pack, such as Quiplash 3 from Pack 7 and Wheel of Enormous Proportions from Pack 8. After producing Junktopia for Pack 9, Luke left the company in 2023 to join Epic Games. Upgrade? Pascal Puschol led the gameplay engineering for Jokeboat, and he too is also a longtime member of Jackbox. Oh, did I mention Jackbox? I meant to say part of the gaming industry since the mid-90s, most notably at a company called Webfoot Technologies. There, he served as a programmer for a variety of PC games, before shifting to portable game systems like the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. According to his credit list on Moby Games, his resume consisted of obscure games and, for lack of a better term, shovelware. These included games with licensed properties such as Dragon Ball, American Girl, and My Little Pony. However, things began to change in 2011, when Pascal was put in charge of programming the DS version of You Don't Know Jack. This ultimately led to him leaving Webfoot soon after for Jellyvision, later Jackbox, where he would serve as a programmer and software engineer for a variety of party games, too many to count here. Aside from that, he was also a lead gameplay engineer for Earwax in Pack 2, Guespionage in Pack 3, Monster Seeking Monster in Pack 4, Patently Stupid in Pack 5, and another game in Pack 6, Dictionarium. After Jokeboat, he served as a lead engineer for Quiplash 2 International, followed by Quiplash 3 in Pack 7. As of 2023, Pascal still works for the company, albeit with the new role of International Principal Engineer. Whatever that is. Jokeboat is also one of the first games Chase McClure worked on at the company, serving as a co-engineer for the Jackbox.TV controller alongside Alex Swan, for all of the games in Pack 6. Chase would go on to lead the controller engineering for Devils in the Details, Wheel of Enormous Proportions, Nonsensory, Quicksort, and probably his most ambitious project, Dodo Rami, which he also came up with the original concept for. Leading the art and animation for the game was Owen Watson. As some of you may know, I am a huge fan of this guy's work. He has a distinct art style that are almost unmatched compared to others, aside from maybe Hector. His previous works include Fakin' It, Monster Seeking Monster, and Split the Room. After Jokeboat, he served as art lead for Devils in the Details, Job, Junktopia, Hypnotorious, and most recently, the long-awaited Fakin' It sequel, All Night Long, for the Jackbox Naughty Pack. Jokeboat was also the first game Steph Egan worked on at the company, where she did the animation on the captain's logs. Previously, she did some freelance animation work, most notably for popular YouTubers such as Markiplier of all people.
Hey buddy, how's it going?
Steph would go on to lead the art direction on Time Jinx, another Jackbox game that I plan to cover some other time. Leading the audio work was Andy Poland, and he really needs no introduction. He was one of the main writers of You Don't Know Jack, voiced Old Man, and composed the music for a variety of Jackbox games, again, too many to list. The music has a calming, tropical vibe to it, with some tracks having a pirate-esque theme, reminding me of something out of SpongeBob. So how did this game get made, I hear you ask? Well, you can thank Brooke Bright for that one. Jokeboat was one of the first games Brooke designed and pitched for the company. Originally, she was working on a concept for a game with a joke-telling mechanic, but it didn't really have any theme to it. That was until another studio writer, Claire McFadden, asked the simple question: what if it was on a boat? And the rest, as they say, is history. The game was then pitched as Jokeboat and was greenlit for Pack 6. And I guess the name stuck, as unlike most Jackbox games in development, Jokeboat remained Jokeboat. There was no need to change it one bit. Brooke Bright would later go on to call this game, quote, a damn delight to work on. After Jokeboat, Bright became the editorial lead for Talking Points, before making her directorial debut with Job, followed by Roomerang, and her best work in my opinion, Dodo Rami. The first teaser for Jokeboat went live on July 13th, 2019, and was followed up by 3 more teasers posted on social media over the course of a month. It was then officially announced as Game 4 of Party Pack 6 on August 23rd, 2019. Wait. That was 5 years ago, holy. Alongside it came a video from Smosh, where they played an early build of the game. Gameplay-wise, it worked similar to the final product, minus a few bugs, placeholders, coloring changes, creepy puppet eyes, and the C- syncing in the background despite it already syncing before. Okay, it's a lot different the more I think about it. A near final build of the game was later unveiled in September. And on October 17th, 2019, the Jackbox Party Pack 6 was officially released for $30 on all major platforms, to very positive reviews. Unless you're on OpenCritic. So now that I've covered the game in great detail, let me go over my personal opinion. First up, let's take a look at the gameplay again. Now, in order to understand where I'm coming from, I'm going to compare this to another Jackbox party game, Madverse City. In that game, you had to create a rap, first by coming up with a word that matches the type given to you, and then finishing up the rap with a phrase that rhymes with the above phrase generated for you. You already know who your opponent is way before you start, and the goal of this game is to basically roast your opponent. In other words, a rap battle. The problem with this approach is, while it does provide for some challenge, it also arguably limits creative freedom. Essentially, you're stuck with what the game gives you in terms of word type, and you're bound to the rules of a typical rap battle. In Joke Boat, it works a lot differently. Here, there's more randomness to the topics, which mixes things up a bit. Then you have the benefit of picking and choosing the setup, the selection of topics, and having more creative freedom for the final line, instead of being bound by rhymes. And since Joke Boat has more of an emphasis on comedy, it makes it more funny than it is with rapping, which can sometimes make people uncomfortable. Now don't get me wrong, it can also be done vice versa, like making raps comedic and jokes uncomfortable, but in terms of the basic approach, Joke Boat is, in my opinion, the better game. It also makes for some good training on comedy. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if someone got the inspiration to become a comedian thanks to this game. The second thing I like about Joke Boat are the visuals. I mean, it's Owen Watson's art style, and it matches the game's premise perfectly. The design for Captain Chuck looks pretty good, and he can get some genuinely funny reactions if you catch the right jokes from him.
Here's the thing about laughter. It comes in waves! I lost my father to the sea. Get ready to go coconuts for tonight's first comic. Please clap.
His design, however, did go through at least a couple iterations. One of the original designs looked similar to something out of Monster Seeking Monster, and he also looked more like a gentleman rather than a comedic captain, even down to the small medals, which could work if the joke was, he looks professional when he's anything but. Thankfully, they changed it to something that not only fits the game a lot more, but also the voice. I have no idea how they would make that voice fit with that design.
Oh god.
But by far my favorite character visuals have to be with the parrot. The strange faces, the stuff he does in the background, he just gets plenty of smiles out of me for some reason. Even the parrot getting captured by what looks like Octoputz's mutated brother is so detailed they didn't even have to try. Also, I don't know about you, but that parrot thinking about a wizard, he must have interacted with a certain someone from Junktopia. Finally, there's the puppet avatars, in which there are 8 of them. 9 if you count Chuck. Obviously, you gotta have Billy O'Brien. Or, at least that's supposed to be him. He doesn't look like the character from the previous games, unless he got literal plastic surgery or it's him from an alternate timeline. The lore really is getting deep. Then you've got the blue-shirted gal with the blonde pigtails, and the red-shirted gal with the black hair. Both of these are most likely the family-friendly puppet versions of the women you see before you enter the lobby. And of course, it can't be an Owen Watson game without having a reference to his previous work, so why not Mayonnaise from Split the Room? Finally, you have Gene from Survive the Internet, who has the voice of a speak and spell for some reason. Oh yeah, I should also mention that all of these puppets have voices. If you have the joke read for you, you can hear gibberish voices that are actually from various Jackbox employees, most of them being the folks who worked on the game. And then there's the third puppet. At first, you might think it's just some random person high-pitched. However, if you turn the pitch down in a sound editor, you might recognize that voice. If you guessed Andy Poland, you're absolutely correct. The final voice basically sounds like Guy Towers from You Don't Know Jack Sports if he was on helium. All of these avatars are pretty well designed, and add some uniqueness to this already unique game. However, this unfortunately does take us to the first problem with Joke Boat. You can't select your own avatar. Instead, the puppets are arranged in a specific player order. For example, if you want to play as Billy, you have to be the one hosting the game. If you wanted to play as the second avatar, you have to be the second player to join, and so on. Now, I'm sure it's technically possible for certain people to get a specific avatar if you send them the room code before anyone else, but that's rather inconvenient compared to just choosing an avatar directly from the controller, which most recent Jackbox games have since integrated. The second problem with Joke Boat is, oddly enough, the comedy in the game itself. When it comes to the host, some of the jokes from him work, while others don't work. The captain logs are pretty much the same thing. Some can be pretty funny, while others can be downright strange. But really, much of the comedy comes from the players who are making the jokes anyway, but even then that varies depending on who you're playing with. This takes me to the third and final problem I have with Joke Boat. The gameplay gets repetitive. I didn't mention this before, but there are only 28 joke setups in the entire game. 25 of them are accessible in family-friendly mode. The more I played through the game, the more setups I saw get repeated, and that lack of variety can be a major problem. Now yes, it is possible to add more joke setups thanks to the power of modding, but unless you have some decent modding skills, like I do, you're not going to get a lot out of this game over and over. But despite its flaws, why do I like it more than Trivia Murder Party 2? Objectively speaking, TMP2 does have more gameplay elements, more prompts, minigames, and a more aggressive final round. However, subjectively speaking, I found TMP2 to be more impressive than funny, only getting a few laughs out of it. Joke Boat, on the other hand, I got far more laughs out of. I don't know if it's just because I've never been a fan of the Trivia Murder Party games in general, but in terms of which Pack 6 game gave me the most laughs, it's definitely Joke Boat. But I can understand why some people won't get into this. Like I said, not all the jokes work, the gameplay gets repetitive, there's not much variety to the joke setups once you go through them all, and not being able to choose your avatar does put the game down a little bit. But if you get the right people in your group, it can really be a fun time. Anytime I fire up Pack 6, the first game that usually comes to mind is Joke Boat, because I'm almost expected to get some good laughs. And I guess I'm not alone, as Captain Chuck would later appear in other Jackbox games, such as a cameo as a ghostly sea captain in the Devil's in the Details episode, The Case of the Haunted Suburb, and is also a playable character in TKO2 from Party Pack 10. So regardless of its problems, I still really like Joke Boat, mainly for its unique premise, gameplay, and art style. But does it justify recommending Party Pack 6? For me, no. If you're new to the franchise, I wouldn't recommend this pack, but if you are looking for new additions to add to your Jackbox collection, then I'd say wait for a sale and maybe you'll get some fun out of them. Probably more than I did. I pre-ordered this pack when it first came out, and while I didn't regret my purchase, I still stand by my opinions with these games. They're mostly, as the kids like to call it, mid. But if you haven't tried Joke Boat yet, I would definitely suggest playing it at least once. Maybe twice even. Check it out and see if it's worth sailing with a boatload of laughs. I'd like to give a special thanks to Toadette64 and Mackenzie for helping me put this together. And I hope you enjoyed this minisode as well. Let me know what other Jackbox games, or heck, even other party games, that you want me to look over in the future. In the meantime, be sure to follow Savvy Sage on social media for more updates. And if you want to support my work, consider becoming a Savvy Insider, where you can get early access, bonus content, and video logs not available to the public. And of course, if you like what I make, be sure to leave a like and comment. It helps me continuously improve my work. And be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for my next episode, where we look at some corporate history. It's gonna be a lot of fun. As always, I will see you all next time. Take care.